Hey YouTube, this is PokéCastXVll here, and today we're going to be taking a look at probably the most hyped card from the latest expansion, and that card is Vileplume. Let's get straight into it and take a look at why it's been so eagerly anticipated. So Vileplume is a stage 2 Pokemon, has 130 HP, a retreat cost of 3, weak to fire, and deals 70 damage for 2 grass and a colorless. Much like Ariados, Vileplume is predominantly used for its ability Irritating Pollen, in where it prevents both players from playing item cards from their hand. A lot of veterans in the game will naturally see the comparison to Vileplume from Undaunted, in where it's pretty much a like-for-like reprint with the exception of a few details. When you consider that at least a third of your deck is made up from item cards, the card is really designed to be as disruptive as locked decks go. As mentioned in the previous 2 videos, Ancient Origins brought us the release of Forest of Giant Plants, which Vileplume utilizes extremely well. Unlike the old format where you would manually have to go through the stages or rely on rare candy, you can bench an Oddish, immediately evolve into Gloom, and if you have the final piece of the puzzle, you can throw down Vileplume, item locking your opponent before they've even had a turn. On the surface, this does seem unlikely, however, in theory the deck is designed to run enough support to making it more possible than not. Generally speaking, the deck does have a core of Trainer's Mail, which usually feeds out your Ultra Balls and your Level Balls. Ultra Ball allows you to search out your Vileplume, while also replenishes your hand size to maximize Shaman EX's setup, while Level Ball helps you search out the stem of your Vileplume line, as well as Unknown if you choose to run it. On top of that, you still have your supporter for the turn. So with all the talk about Vileplume, what other Pokemon can be utilized to maximize its potential? There are quite a few decks in testing, however there are 2 in particular that are obvious contenders. The first and most predictable target is Giratina EX. Standing at 170 HP, Giratina makes a solid attacker both offensively and disruptively. Its ability, Renegade Pulse, prevents all effects and damage from attacks done to it by your opponent's Mega Pokemon. This already limits your opponent's attacking options, as cards like Mega Manectric and Mega Sceptile won't have any effect on Giratina. The second aspect of Giratina EX is its attack, which for a Grass, Psychic and 2 colorless deals 100 damage and prevents your opponent from playing any special energy, stadiums and tool cards. When using Chaos Wheel, your opponent is limited to only using supporter cards and attaching basic energy if you have Vileplume set up. If you are interested in a Giratina variant of the deck, here is a brief list I've put together to get you started. This list adds up to 58 cards, which doesn't leave too much room for innovation. However, you can adjust cards depending to your preference. This is a personal list of mine that I've been testing, and as you can see, it is heavily supporter based, as having Vileplume doesn't allow you access to your item cards. Saying that, it does have an engine of item cards which allows you to set up much faster and more consistently. The deck features a standard Pokemon list which doesn't need too much explanation. The unknowns are targets for Level Balls should you need them, and helps you feed through your resources much faster, while you also run a 3-3-3 line of Vileplume, just in case you're forced to sycamore parts of the evolution line, as you don't run any form of recovery. More interestingly, this deck runs 4 AZ. Unlike Vileplume from Undaunted, one issue that can occur when playing Vileplume is its high retreat cost, as it's pretty standard for most decks to run at least 2 copies of Lysander. With that in mind, you also don't run any form of switching on top of being item locked. As long as Forest of Giant Plants is in play, you can pick up Vileplume with AZ, and then put the whole thing back down as if nothing happens. Also remembering that you can also use AZ offensively if you want to have access to your item cards again. One thing that this deck does struggle with a lot is keeping up to pace with the rest of the format, and its energy acceleration is quite slow. With that said, cards like Yveltal EX are starting to see a lot more play, which is something that this deck struggles with a lot, which is why there are 3 Pokemon Center Lady included. It not only helps you keep your Giratinas alive, but also allows you enough time to start charging up a second attacker in the process. You have 2 Ace Trainer, which if your opponent is locked down and you're able to put them to 3 cards, can help be disruptive even further, remembering that you do have to be behind on prizes to use it. And finally, you have 3 Birch as a form of drawing more support, and a standard 2 Lysander. Items and energy cards are pretty straightforward. You have a 4-4 line of Ultra Ball and Trainer's Mail, as well as the 2 Level Balls, which searches out 2/3 of your Vileplume line, and your unknowns. And finally, you have 4 double colorless energy and 4 double dragon energy, which compensates both grass and psychic typings for your Giratina. Other inclusions you could include are Lugia EX as a form of another attacker since you already run double colorless energy, or even Miltank, which has good synergy with the deck if you prefer a non-EX attacker. You also have the option of Hydreigon EX, which not only gives your dragon Pokemon less retreat if a stadium is in play, but also gives you another attacking option as Shred isn't affected by effects on the defending Pokemon. This means cards like Reggie Ice or Pyro, to name a few, won't give you as much trouble as you initially would have had. In terms of trainers, you have the option of Xerosic as well as Team Flare's Grunt, which denies your opponent any form of energy attachment if it's on the active. One thing this deck does have problems with is Hex Maniac, which shuts down all abilities. This not only turns off your Vileplume, but also makes your Giratinas susceptible to Mega Pokemon. Unfortunately, there's not too much that can be teched against it, other than making sure your Vileplume is in place so they're not able to VS Secret back later on. With all that said, that is the Giratina side done and dusted, so let's move on to the second option that you have for Vileplume. Moving on, Vileplume's also best paired with Reggie Ice, released in Ancient Origins. Standing at 120 HP with a 3 retreat cost and being weak to steel, Reggie Ice is made more playable with its 2 attacks. The first attack, Ice Beam, for a water and a colorless, deals 30 damage and has the added effect of paralysis if you're able to hit heads on a coin flip. While being item locked, this really leaves cards like AZ and Cassius the only forms of retreating if you're able to paralyze your opponent with Vileplume in play. However, it's Resistance Blizzard, Reggie Ice's second attack, that makes Reggie Ice really decent in this format. For a water and 2 colorless, Resistance Blizzard deals a solid 70 damage and, like a Powdon, prevents the effects and damage done to your Pokemon by your opponent's EX Pokemon the following turn. This leaves your opponent's options of taking down a single Reggie Ice pretty limited. Let's take a look at a skeleton that I've drawn up for this variant of the deck. So as you can see, the list is very similar to Giratina in that the item engine is exactly the same. It does also feature 2 Miltank, which was something that was optional to the Giratina list, as you will be needing a second attacker. This list adds up to 56 cards, which leaves you 4 free slots. What's different about this skeleton is that this list doesn't include the center ladies, as unlike Giratina, Reggie Ice is quite tough to take down. Again, Lugia EX makes a great secondary attacker, and you could even bump up the water energy if you feel 4 is a bit low. And so there you pretty much have it, that is Vileplume all concluded for you. If you would like to see more Pokemon related content, all you have to do is click the annotation at the end of this video, and if you would like to subscribe to the channel, there will also be a subscribe button there as well. Thanks very much for watching guys, and I will see you all next time.